What's the private equity lesson here, David? I mean, what do you take away as you talk to your investors, as you talk to your partners? I mean, this will stand out clearly as a lesson to some extent in doubling down in a lot of ways, going back in. Is it replicable? Like, what do you take from this that you apply to future investments?
We don't have the expectation that all of a sudden magic happens just because we've been successful with a particular investment. But the thing that I think we began to get excited about is the power of the alignment that we could bring. In this case, we only owned 15% of the company. And yet we were able to work with the management team and the board, and then ultimately the shareholders, to create a really powerful runway for this company. And I think the idea of thinking about how we might be able to do that more broadly is something that we've begun thinking those propositions through. Our phone is ringing. And so in this regard, I think the idea that there shouldn't be any arbitrary boundaries between a private company and a public company. The idea of applying this longer term strategy and approach is what a lot of these public companies need. Not every situation will be applicable, but that's at least part of the thing that we've kept an open mind around.
Well, and I do wonder about that in the same way that it feels like we're at an inflection point of sorts around experiences and lifestyles and things like that. We're at something of an inflection point for private equity, where people are asking a lot of big questions around, adding value, looking beyond the bottom line. We're hearing that from the Business Roundtable and others. What does private equity look like going forward with this? You've got a couple fresh pools of capital to deploy at this point. What are people looking for from you?
I mean, I think that people are rightly concerned that we're at the peak of the economic cycle. And what does that mean as you're leaning into a private equity industry that's grown really rapidly over the last 10 years? And so one of the things that I think has given me some comfort is seeing that the industry learned a lot from the last downturn. And so while you're always going to have pressure, I think there's been a tremendous strides that our industry's taken to really lean into really savvy operational strategies for their companies. And so really thinking like an industrialist as opposed to a financier. And that vision is part of where private equity can help think about best practices. We get the benefit with 75 portfolio companies that we have around the world. We're eager to bring any of these best ideas to our companies as soon as we can.